My wife texted. Paris with the girls, we extended it to 2 weeks, having the time of our lives. I replied, perfect. Hope you and Alex enjoy every minute. The divorce papers are signed. Then I blocked her everywhere. Her first missed call came from her mother. The next 20 were from her. Sometimes life forces you to become a detective in your own marriage, and the evidence you uncover changes everything you thought you knew about the person sleeping next to you. That's exactly what happened when Lisa's cheerful update from what she claimed was Barcelona triggered the final move in a game I'd been playing alone for weeks. I stared at her text message for exactly 30 seconds before typing my response. The satisfaction of finally revealing what I knew felt like releasing pressure that had been building for months. Within minutes, my phone started lighting up with blocked calls, but I was ready for this moment. I'd spent the last month methodically gathering evidence after discovering suspicious charges on our joint credit card, $400 at a luxury spa resort 2 hours away from our home in Tucson, charged on a Tuesday when Lisa claimed she was working late at the insurance company. That single transaction led me down a rabbit hole that destroyed any lingering doubts about what was really happening in my marriage. Through our shared phone plan and cloud backup system, I uncovered 6 months of deleted text messages between Lisa and Alex Morrison from her claims department. The conversations revealed everything: their romantic weekend getaways at mountain cabins, intimate discussions about their future together, and detailed plans for this European trip that was supposedly a work retreat with her female coworkers. The most damning evidence came from a message where Lisa complained about me being emotionally distant and too focused on work, while simultaneously planning to spend 2 weeks in Spain with another man using money from our joint savings account. I'd already consulted with attorney Rachel Stone 3 weeks ago, filing all the necessary paperwork while Lisa was supposedly attending training seminars that didn't exist. Rachel reviewed my evidence with the clinical efficiency of someone who'd seen this story countless times before. This is actually one of the more straightforward cases I've handled, she told me, organizing the printed screenshots and credit card statements. Your wife documented her own affair better than most private investigators could have. The irony wasn't lost on me that Lisa's compulsive need to share every detail of her life through texts and social media had provided the perfect paper trail for our divorce proceedings. The most painful part wasn't discovering the affair itself, but realizing how calculated and deliberate Lisa's deception had been. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a mistake, it was a sustained campaign of lies spanning half a year. She'd looked me in the eye every morning, kissed me goodbye, and then spent her days planning a secret life with someone else. The woman I'd been married to for 5 years had become a complete stranger, someone capable of extraordinary manipulation and callousness that I never could have imagined when we exchanged vows. As I waited for the inevitable storm of family drama that would follow my revelation, I felt something unexpected: relief. The constant feeling that something was wrong, the nagging suspicion that had been eating at me for months, finally had confirmation. I wasn't crazy, paranoid, or overly suspicious. I was married to someone who had chosen to betray everything we'd built together, and now she was about to discover that actions have consequences, even when you think you're clever enough to avoid them. Building my case required the methodical approach I used in my insurance adjuster work: verify everything, document everything, assume nothing. I started by cross-referencing Lisa's supposed travel companions through social media and direct contact, discovering that Maria was actually visiting family in Mexico during the exact dates of Lisa's trip, while Jennifer was home with her 3-month-old baby she'd just delivered. When I casually asked Jennifer about the Barcelona work retreat during a chance encounter at the grocery store, her confused expression told me everything I needed to know. "What Barcelona trip?" she asked, genuinely puzzled. "I've been on maternity leave since August, and Maria's been planning her Mexico vacation for months." The web of lies was unraveling with each conversation, revealing the elaborate fiction Lisa had constructed to cover her European romantic getaway. The deleted text messages I recovered through our cloud backup painted a disturbing picture of deliberate planning and emotional manipulation. Alex had been feeding Lisa fantasies about their future together while she complained endlessly about our marriage, calling me boring and predictable in messages that felt like daggers to read. Their conversations revealed weekend trips to mountain cabins outside Tucson, intimate dinners at restaurants I'd never been to, and detailed discussions about the Barcelona trip that Alex had apparently been planning for months. "Can't wait to show you Paris after Barcelona," one of his messages read. "We deserve this after dealing with all the drama at home." The casual way they discussed dismantling my life while I worked overtime to pay for the very credit cards they were using was breathtaking in its cruelty. I moved strategically during Lisa's absence, treating our divorce like the complex insurance case it essentially was. I separated our joint savings account, redirecting my salary to a new bank account she couldn't access, and began the process of extricating myself from our shared financial obligations. Our rental house lease was in both names, but I'd already spoken with the landlord about the situation and secured his understanding about my early departure. The hardest part was maintaining normal routines while systematically dismantling our shared life, going through the motions of being a concerned husband while knowing our marriage was already over. I even watered her plants and paid the bills, partly out of habit and partly because I wanted to handle this separation with dignity rather than petty revenge. I also reached out to Lisa's parents, David and Carol, with a carefully worded message about serious marital difficulties, without revealing the full extent of her betrayal. "Lisa and I are going through some challenges right now," I texted her father. "I wanted you to hear from me that we're likely heading toward separation, though I hope we can handle this as adults." I deliberately avoided details about Alex or the affair, knowing that information would come out soon enough and wanting to maintain some moral high ground when the inevitable family drama erupted. David's response was immediate and concerned. "What happened?" "Lisa seemed so happy when she left for her work trip. Are you sure you can't work this out?" His genuine confusion about the situation confirmed that Lisa had lied to her own parents about the nature of her travels, adding another layer of deception to her already impressive collection of lies. Within minutes of sending my response about the divorce papers, my phone exploded with calls from numbers I recognized: Lisa's sister, her mother Carol, her best friend from college, even her cousin Kelly from Phoenix. I blocked each one systematically, watching the missed call notifications pile up like evidence of the chaos I'd just unleashed across 3 time zones. The satisfaction of maintaining complete control over the situation felt almost therapeutic after months of being manipulated and lied to by someone I trusted completely. Each blocked call represented another person who would eventually learn the truth about Lisa's carefully constructed fiction, and I was genuinely curious to see how she'd try to spin this story when she could no longer control the narrative. Lisa's father David arrived at our house 2 hours later, using the spare key we'd given him for emergencies. I was expecting this visit and had prepared accordingly, printing out the most damning evidence and organizing it in a manila folder like the insurance case files I handled at work. "Ben, what the hell is going on?" he demanded, his face red with confusion and anger. "Carol's been crying since Lisa called her, and nobody can reach you. Lisa says you've lost your mind and filed for divorce out of nowhere." I handed him the folder without saying a word, watching his expression change from anger to confusion to disgust as he reviewed hotel receipts showing 2 guests, text message screenshots discussing their romantic getaway, and photographic evidence I'd gathered showing that Maria and Jennifer were never in Barcelona. "This can't be right," David said, his voice hollow as he stared at a particularly damning message where Lisa called me pathetic for working late while she was planning her European affair. "Lisa wouldn't do this. There has to be some explanation." I appreciated David's loyalty to his daughter, but I wasn't interested in enabling the same denial that had probably allowed Lisa to become this manipulative in the first place. "There's an explanation," I said calmly. "Your daughter has been having an affair for 6 months and used our joint savings to fund a romantic trip to Europe with her coworker. She lied to you, she lied to me, and she lied to everyone else who cared about her." When David suggested marriage counseling or working things out, I firmly explained that Lisa had made deliberate choices over 6 months and now needed to face the consequences of her systematic deception. Lisa managed to call from an international number later that evening, her voice shaky and desperate in a way I'd never heard before. "Ben, please, you have to listen to me," she began, but I cut her off immediately. "I know Alex is with you in Barcelona," I said. "I have 6 months of text messages, hotel receipts, and photographic evidence. I'm not interested in hearing explanations or excuses." She initially tried denying everything, claiming Alex was just a friend who happened to be in Europe at the same time, but when I started reading specific text messages aloud, her story crumbled completely. Okay, yes, Alex is here, she finally admitted, her voice breaking. But it's not what you think. We're just friends, and things got complicated. I never meant for this to happen. The conversation that followed revealed the depth of her self-deception and entitlement. Lisa actually seemed surprised that I discovered her affair, as if her careful deletion of messages and elaborate cover stories should have been enough to hide 6 months of systematic betrayal. How did you even find out? She asked, genuinely confused about how her perfect plan had unraveled. When I explained about the spa charges and cloud backup recovery, she became angry rather than apologetic. You went through my private messages? You invaded my privacy? The irony of someone who'd been lying to me for half our marriage complaining about privacy violations was almost amusing. Ben, we can fix this, she pleaded as the call continued. I'll end things with Alex right now. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. But her promises felt as empty as every other lie she told me, and I knew that the woman I'd married no longer existed, if she ever had. Lisa's desperate attempts at damage control over the following days included promises to end her relationship with Alex immediately, offers to attend couples therapy, and emotional manipulation through tears and guilt trips about our 5-year marriage being worth saving. She called from different international numbers when I blocked each one, leaving voicemails that ranged from angry accusations to sobbing apologies to threats about what her family would do to me for abandoning her overseas. Ben, please, you can't just throw away everything we built together, she cried during one particularly pathetic message. I made a mistake, but people make mistakes. That's what marriage is about, working through problems together. I listened to each voicemail once before deleting it, marveling at how someone who'd spent 6 months planning her betrayal could now claim it was just a momentary lapse in judgment. The manipulation tactics she employed were the same ones I'd seen her use whenever caught in smaller lies throughout our relationship. The tears, the promises to change, the attempts to shift blame back onto me for being too controlling or suspicious. You were always working late, she said during one call. You never wanted to go out anymore. You made me feel invisible in my own marriage. The revisionist history was breathtaking in its audacity, considering I'd been working overtime specifically to save money for the house down payment she'd been secretly spending on romantic getaways with Alex. When I reminded her that she'd been the one declining dinner invitations and canceling date nights for months, claiming she was too tired from work, she actually had the nerve to say, "That's because I was unhappy, Ben. You should have noticed I was struggling instead of just accepting that everything was fine." When she asked where she would live upon returning to Tucson, I coldly suggested Alex's apartment, emphasizing that her housing situation was no longer my responsibility. What am I supposed to tell people? She asked, as if public embarrassment was her biggest concern rather than the destruction of our marriage. Tell them the truth, I replied, that you chose to have an affair and your husband chose not to accept that behavior. The conversation revealed that Alex had been feeding Lisa fantasies about their future together while simultaneously planning his own exit strategy once the affair became public knowledge. He's talking about transferring to the Denver office, she admitted during one particularly desperate call. He says the situation here is too complicated now that you know. The idea that her affair partner was already planning to abandon her once the consequences became real would have been funny if it wasn't so predictable. My coworkers and supervisor at the insurance company, Steve Patterson, offered unexpected support when word about my situation inevitably spread through our small office. Steve pulled me aside during lunch one day, his expression serious but kind. I heard you're going through a rough patch at home, he said. If you need any flexibility with your schedule or want to talk to someone who's been through similar circumstances, I'm here. It turned out Steve had experienced his own divorce 5 years earlier under remarkably similar circumstances. A cheating spouse, elaborate lies, and the same emotional manipulation tactics during the aftermath. The hardest part isn't the betrayal itself, he told me. It's realizing that the person you thought you knew never really existed. But I promise you, life gets significantly better once you stop trying to fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. The support from my professional network contrasted sharply with the chaos Lisa was creating among our mutual friends and her family members, who were receiving conflicting stories about our separation depending on which version served her narrative best. Some heard that I was having a midlife crisis and had become irrationally jealous and controlling. Others were told that we'd grown apart naturally and were separating amicably. The few who pressed for details got elaborate stories about my alleged emotional abuse and unreasonable demands that she account for every minute of her time. Watching her scramble to control multiple narratives while dealing with the reality that Alex was already planning his escape was almost entertaining, if it wasn't so pathetic. The woman who'd been so confident in her ability to manipulate everyone around her was finally discovering that some consequences can't be talked, cried, or lied away. The divorce hearing in November proceeded with the swift efficiency of a well-documented insurance claim, thanks to the comprehensive evidence package I'd prepared over the previous months. Judge Harrison reviewed my financial records showing Lisa's misuse of our joint credit card for the affair, the recovered text messages detailing her 6-month deception, and the photographic evidence proving her Barcelona trip was entirely fabricated as a work retreat. Lisa's expensive attorney, funded by her parents' retirement savings, attempted to portray me as vindictive and unwilling to work on our marriage, but the evidence spoke louder than any emotional appeals. Mr. Thompson clearly planned this divorce while his wife was traveling, her lawyer argued, showing a calculated desire for revenge rather than genuine concern for their relationship. Judge Harrison looked unimpressed as he flipped through page after page of Lisa's text messages describing me as pathetic and boring, while planning romantic getaways with Alex. Mrs. Thompson, the judge said, addressing Lisa directly, these communications span 6 months and include detailed financial planning for trips with another man using marital assets. This appears to be systematic deception rather than a momentary indiscretion. Lisa's face crumpled as she realized her lawyer's strategy wasn't working, and she actually tried to interrupt the proceedings to speak directly to me. Ben, please, we can still fix this. I know I made mistakes, but throwing away 5 years of marriage over one relationship is insane. Her use of the word relationship instead of affair perfectly captured her inability to acknowledge the severity of her actions, even while sitting in divorce court facing the consequences of those choices. Meanwhile, Lisa's professional and social life had crumbled faster than her marriage. Alex had indeed transferred to the company's Denver branch within weeks of their Barcelona trip, leaving her to face workplace gossip and potential disciplinary action for conducting an office affair that had become public knowledge throughout their department. Her supposed friends Maria and Jennifer felt deeply betrayed by having their names used as alibis for Lisa's European getaway and cut contact completely, refusing to participate in her victim narrative about my alleged controlling behavior. I can't believe she dragged us into her lies, Jennifer told me during a chance encounter at the grocery store. She had me convinced you were going through marriage problems and that the Barcelona trip was her way of getting space to think. I feel like an idiot for believing her sob stories about your relationship. Lisa had moved back into her childhood bedroom at her parents' house in shame, a 29-year-old woman sleeping under unicorn posters while trying to rebuild a life she'd destroyed through her own choices. David and Carol were struggling to reconcile the daughter they thought they knew with the evidence of her systematic deception, and their marriage was reportedly strained by disagreements about how much support to provide during her crisis. Carol blamed me for being unforgiving and unwilling to work through marital problems, while David had seen enough evidence to understand that Lisa's behavior went far beyond normal relationship issues. She's our daughter, but what she did to you was inexcusable, he told me during a brief phone conversation. I don't know how she became capable of that level of deception, but I understand why you can't forgive it. I received an unexpected visit from Lisa's cousin Kelly, who drove down from Phoenix specifically to apologize for initially defending Lisa when the news broke. I'm sorry, Ben, she said, sitting uncomfortably in my living room. When Lisa first called crying about the divorce, I believed her story about you having a breakdown and filing papers out of nowhere. But after talking to my aunt and uncle and seeing some of the evidence, I realized she manipulated all of us. Kelly explained that Lisa had been calling family members with increasingly desperate stories about my alleged mental health issues, trying to generate sympathy and support for her position. She told my mom you'd become paranoid and obsessive, checking up on her constantly and accusing her of cheating for no reason. Now we know you had every reason to be suspicious, and honestly, the family is struggling to understand how she could lie to everyone who cared about her. The conversation was awkward but necessary, and I appreciated Kelly's willingness to acknowledge how thoroughly Lisa had deceived everyone in her orbit, not just me. 3 months post-divorce, I had been promoted to senior claims investigator with a substantial raise and moved into a modern apartment downtown, finally feeling at peace with my decision and rebuilding the social connections I'd neglected during the final year of my marriage. My new place had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a home office where I could work without the constant tension that had filled our old house, and most importantly, no traces of the life I'd shared with someone who'd turned out to be a complete stranger. Steve had recommended me for the promotion partly based on the analytical skills I'd demonstrated during my divorce proceedings, joking that anyone who could build that comprehensive of a case file deserved to be investigating insurance fraud professionally. The irony wasn't lost on me that discovering my wife's affair had actually advanced my career. I learned through mutual acquaintances that Lisa had given birth to a son in February and that Alex had briefly returned from Denver for the birth before permanently relocating to avoid child support obligations. The timeline made it clear that Lisa had been pregnant during our divorce proceedings, which explains some of her more desperate attempts at reconciliation during those final months. According to Jennifer, who'd heard the story through workplace gossip, Alex had initially promised to support Lisa and the baby but quickly realized that a child would complicate his carefully managed bachelor lifestyle in Colorado. He visited exactly once, Jennifer told me during a coffee meetup, took some photos for social media to look like a responsible father, then disappeared again. Lisa's been trying to track him down for child support, but apparently he's already involved with someone else and treating this like it never happened. During a chance encounter at the farmer's market on a Saturday morning, Lisa approached me with the baby, attempting to apologize and reveal that Alex had abandoned them both, but I maintained firm boundaries and refused to provide emotional support or forgiveness. She looked exhausted in a way that went beyond new motherhood. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes were ill-fitting, and she had the hollow-eyed appearance of someone whose carefully constructed life had completely collapsed. "Ben, I know you probably don't want to see me," she said, shifting the baby nervously, "but I wanted to apologize for everything that happened between us. I know I hurt you terribly and I'm sorry." I acknowledged her words with a polite nod but didn't engage emotionally, treating her like any other acquaintance I might encounter during errands. She described her current life working part-time at a call center while living with her parents, clearly hoping to evoke sympathy, but I simply listened without offering comfort or advice. "It's been really hard," she continued, probably expecting me to ask about her struggles or offer help. "Alex completely abandoned us after promising he'd be there for his son. I'm basically a single mother living in my childhood bedroom, trying to figure out how to rebuild my life from nothing." The irony of her situation wasn't lost on me. She'd destroyed a stable marriage for a fantasy relationship with someone who discarded her the moment real responsibility appeared. But I felt no satisfaction in her misery, just a distant sense of relief that I'd escaped before she could drag me down with her poor choices. "I hope things work out for you," I said simply, preparing to leave. "And I hope your son has a good life." She looked like she wanted to say more, perhaps hoping I'd offer to help or suggest we could be friends, but I wasn't interested in providing emotional closure for someone who'd systematically lied to me for months. As I walked away, I heard her call out, "Ben, do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me?" I turned back briefly and said, "I'm not angry anymore, Lisa. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean going backward." The encounter reinforced my conviction that I'd made the right choice in prioritizing my own well-being over trying to salvage a relationship built on lies and manipulation. 6 months after the divorce, I had begun dating Michelle, a teacher I met at a community outdoor group, appreciating the honesty and straightforward communication that was missing from my marriage. Michelle was refreshingly direct about her thoughts and feelings, never playing games or dropping hints that required interpretation. When she was tired, she said so. When she wanted to spend time together, she asked directly. When she disagreed with something, she explained her perspective clearly instead of letting resentment build in silence. Our relationship developed naturally without the constant tension and second-guessing that had characterized my final years with Lisa, and I found myself remembering what it felt like to trust someone completely. When Michelle asked about my ex-wife during one of our evening walks, I shared the story matter-of-factly, explaining my decision to leave rather than attempt reconciliation, which Michelle respected as a sign of strong personal boundaries. Some people think divorce should always be a last resort, she said thoughtfully, but sometimes it's actually the healthiest choice for everyone involved. You can't build a future with someone who's actively deceiving you. Her perspective was grounded in reality rather than romantic idealism, and she understood that some betrayals are too fundamental to overcome through counseling or good intentions. I reflected on the valuable lessons learned about recognizing warning signs, trusting my instincts, and prioritizing self-respect over the fear of being alone. The months I'd spent questioning my own perceptions while Lisa gaslighted me about her suspicious behavior had taught me to trust my analytical mind even when emotions were involved. The experience had been painful but educational, showing me the difference between genuine love and manipulative performance, between partnership and exploitation, between temporary loneliness and the soul-crushing isolation of being deceived by someone you trust completely. I felt no regret about the marriage or the divorce, understanding that both experiences had taught me important truths about relationships and personal worth that would serve me well in the future. Lisa had actually done me a favor by revealing her true character before we'd had children or bought property together, though I doubted she'd appreciate that perspective on her life choices. The 5 years I'd spent with her weren't wasted time. They were an education in recognizing red flags, setting boundaries, and understanding that some people view relationships as transactions rather than partnerships. Most importantly, I'd learned that I'd rather be alone than be with someone who saw me as a convenience rather than a choice, and that knowledge had made me a better partner for someone who actually deserved my trust and attention.